Imagine you are walking through a frozen valley about 45,000 years ago. The sun is almost gone. The wind is sharp enough to make your eyes water. Your hands are numb. Your stomach is empty in that deep, ancient way where it stops being hunger and starts becoming a warning. You are not wearing boots. You do not have a phone. There is no doctor, no road, no flashlight, no supermarket, no police, no warm apartment waiting behind a locked door. Just snow, stone, animal tracks, and the sound of your own breathing. Then you see them, figures near the ridge. They are not wolves, not bears, not deer. They stand upright. They carry tools. They move like people. But they are not your people. Their bodies are heavier. Their faces are different. Their group is smaller, silent, watching you from the cold blue shadow of the rocks. And in that moment, the strangest question in human history becomes very real. If there were other humans on Earth, why are we the only ones left? How did one kind of human survive, spread, and eventually fill the planet, while the others faded into bones, cave dust, and tiny fragments of DNA inside us? By the end of this story, ancient humans will not look like silly cave people anymore. They will look like survivors in a world that kept trying to erase them. And the answer will not be as simple as we were smarter. That is too easy, and honestly, a little too flattering. The real answer is messier, colder, more uncomfortable. It involves climate chaos, tiny populations, dangerous neighbors, children who had to learn fast, groups that remembered where food appeared months before it appeared, tools that changed the rules of distance, and a kind of social intelligence that may have been more powerful than muscle. Because Homo sapiens did not win the Ice Age like a superhero. We survived it more like a nervous group project where everyone had a spear, nobody had enough food, and one bad decision could remove your entire bloodline from history. And here is the first thing most people forget. For a long time, we were not alone. When modern humans began spreading out of Africa, the world already had other human groups. Neanderthals lived across Europe and Western Asia. Denisovans were somewhere in Asia, though we mostly know them from DNA and a few fossils. Other older human relatives had lived in different places before that. Earth was not a stage with one main character. It was more like a dangerous family reunion, except nobody had name tags, everyone was cold, and several cousins had been evolving separately for hundreds of thousands of years. Neanderthals were not dumb brutes. That old image is basically prehistoric slander with bad posture. They made tools, they controlled fire, they hunted large animals, they cared for injured members of their groups. Some evidence suggests they used pigments, ornaments, and possibly symbolic behavior. They were tough, skilled, and adapted to hard landscapes. In a cold European valley, a Neanderthal was not some failed prototype. A Neanderthal was exactly the kind of person you did not want to underestimate. So the mystery becomes worse. If they were strong, experienced, and already adapted to the Ice Age, why are they gone? And why are we here, wearing soft socks, losing arguments with printer settings? To understand that, we have to start with a very rude fact. Humans are not physically impressive. Take away our tools, our fire, our buildings, our emergency services, our shoes, our antibiotics, our group chat, and suddenly we are just anxious meat with opinions. We do not have claws. We do not have fangs. Our skin is not armor. We are not especially fast. Our night vision is embarrassing. A wolf can smell a story in the wind. An eagle can see lunch from the sky. A bear can solve many problems by being a bear. A naked human in the Ice Age looks less like the ruler of Earth and more like an animal that forgot to finish downloading its survival features. And yet that weak-looking animal became the last human left. So what did we have? First, we had each other. That sounds sweet. It was not always sweet. It was survival math. A lone human is fragile. A group is armor. One person hears something in the dark. Another keeps the fire alive. Another remembers the safe path across the valley. Another knows which plant makes your stomach explode in a deeply educational way. Another watches the children. Another shapes stone. Another notices that the herd moved earlier this year. Together, the group becomes something bigger than a body. It becomes a living machine made of memory, fear, skill, and gossip. And yes, gossip matters. In a dangerous world, information is food. Who saw the bison? Who found water? Who got sick after eating those berries? Who heard hyenas near the old camp? Who walked too close to the marsh and almost disappeared in mud? Language, even in simple forms, would have been like a survival app running inside the group. No battery required. Terrible user interface. Very high stakes. But here is where it gets strange. Group cooperation alone was not enough, because other human groups also cooperated. Neanderthals were social too. They hunted together. They survived for a very long time. So the question becomes sharper. What made Homo sapiens different enough to keep going? One answer may be scale. Not just group size in one camp, but the size of the social world. Imagine two small groups in the Ice Age. One group knows only the valley, the nearby river, and maybe a few neighboring people. The other group has wider connections. Cousins far away, exchange partners, stories from beyond the mountains, a shell from the coast, a stone tool made from material found far from home. That second group has more than objects. It has options. If the local reindeer move away, someone may know another route. If a tool style works better, it can spread. If a child grows up learning stories from several families, that child inherits a bigger map than the one under their feet. Memory becomes portable. A path is not just a path. It is a sentence passed down through generations. When the river drops, cross there. When the red berries appear, the herds will follow. Do not sleep near that cave. Your uncle did that. Your uncle is now a cautionary tale. This is the part most people miss. Survival was not only about being clever in the moment. It was about storing solutions across time. A single invention is useful, but a culture that keeps inventions, teaches them, improves them, and spreads them is terrifying. A spear is one tool. A group that teaches children how to make better spears every generation is a weapon system. Fire was another layer. Fire was not just warmth. Fire was a heater, a nightlight, a cooking device, a predator warning, a social center, and probably the prehistoric version of everyone staring at the same screen. Around fire, people could see faces after dark. They could repair tools. They could cook food, making some calories easier to digest. They could keep predators at a distance. They could tell stories, pass warnings, and turn a terrifying night into a slightly more organized, terrifying night. Picture a small group huddled under a rock shelter. Outside, eyes shine in the darkness. Inside, one person feeds the fire. Another scrapes a hide. A child watches an older hand strike stone again and again until a sharp flake breaks free. That child is not just seeing a tool being made. That child is watching failure become knowledge. And in prehistory, that may have been one of the most important human superpowers: trial and error. A modern person burns dinner and orders pizza. An ancient person burns dinner and learns something about fuel, wind, cooking time, meat, smoke, and how angry everyone gets when food becomes charcoal. Every mistake carried information. The problem was that many mistakes could also kill you. Eat the wrong plant, step on the wrong ice, approach the wrong animal, sleep in the wrong place, ignore a small cut until it becomes a swollen, hot, dangerous infection. So groups needed ways to remember mistakes without repeating them every generation. This is where teaching becomes survival technology. Children had to learn what mattered before the world tested them too harshly. A child who learns tracks can see animals that are not there anymore. A footprint in mud is yesterday's news. Broken grass is a message. Droppings are a weather report from an animal's digestive system, which is not glamorous, but very useful. Tracking turns the landscape into a page. And ancient humans were reading constantly, not because they were poetic, because missing one detail could mean walking into hunger. Now keep this in mind, because it matters later. Many of the things that made Homo sapiens powerful were not dramatic in the way movies like. No lightning bolt, no magic invention, no one caveman suddenly inventing civilization while heroic music plays. Just many tiny advantages stacked together. A slightly wider social network, a better memory system, more flexible tools, a willingness to move, a habit of copying good ideas, a group that could absorb strangers, exchange mates, trade materials, and learn from people who lived differently. And this matters because the Ice Age was not stable. It was not one long winter with mammoths walking around like background decoration. Climate shifted, habitats changed, forests expanded and shrank, grasslands moved, animals migrated. Some regions became harder to live in. The map of survival kept being redrawn, and nobody sent an update. For small populations, that is brutal. If you are part of a large, connected population, a disaster in one area is terrible, but not necessarily the end. If you are part of a small, isolated group, one bad generation can be catastrophic. A few failed hunts, a disease, a harsh winter, too few children surviving, too few unrelated partners, too much distance between groups. Suddenly, your people are not defeated in battle. They simply become fewer, and fewer, and fewer, until one day, no one is left to teach the old route across the ridge. This may have been one of the quiet killers of other human groups. Small numbers. Neanderthals, for example, seem to have lived in relatively small and scattered populations. That does not mean they were doomed from the start. They survived for a very long time. But small populations are vulnerable. They are like a fire with only a few embers. It can keep burning, but wind, rain, or one careless moment can end it. And then Homo sapiens arrived in more and more places. Not as one giant army, more like waves, movements, families, bands, expansions, retreats, returns. Sometimes we may have competed with other humans for the same animals, the same shelters, the same stone sources, the same safe valleys. Competition does not have to look like a dramatic battle scene. It can look like arriving at a hunting ground 2 days earlier. It can look like taking the best campsite. It can look like having a larger exchange network so your tools improve faster. It can look like surviving a lean season because someone's cousin knows where fish gather when the river changes. Tiny advantages become huge when everyone is hungry. And here is the uncomfortable part. We did not only replace other humans, we also mixed with them. Modern people outside Africa carry small amounts of Neanderthal ancestry. Some populations also carry Denisovan ancestry. That means some encounters were not just violent or distant, some were intimate. Families formed, children were born. So when we ask, why did they disappear? The answer is not always, they died and we lived. Sometimes the answer is, they became part of us. That is a strange kind of disappearance, not a clean ending, more like a river flowing into another river until you can no longer point to the exact line where one ends. But that does not make the story gentle, because genetic survival is not the same as cultural survival. A few fragments of DNA can remain while languages, songs, gestures, routes, jokes, warnings, and names vanish forever. Imagine a Neanderthal child learning how to shape a tool beside a fire. Imagine a Denisovan group crossing a high, cold landscape. Imagine people laughing, arguing, grieving, teaching, making bad decisions, making brilliant ones. Almost all of that is gone. Not because they were not human enough, but because history is merciless to small groups. Here is the thing that actually happened. In Siberia, at Denisova cave, scientists found evidence that different human groups used the same region across time, including Neanderthals, Denisovans, and modern humans. Ancient DNA from that cave even revealed a girl who had a Neanderthal mother and a Denisovan father. Think about that for a second. This is not a fantasy crossover episode. This was a real child, a child whose parents came from two different ancient human groups. Suddenly, the prehistoric world feels less like a simple family tree and more like a tangled, dangerous neighborhood. Different humans met. Sometimes they avoided each other, sometimes they competed, sometimes they had children. The world was not us versus them in a clean cartoon way. It was contact, confusion, attraction, fear, exchange, and probably a lot of awkward staring across valleys. And then, over thousands of years, only one branch remained visible: ours. But why ours? Another layer may be flexibility. Homo sapiens seem to have been unusually good at living in many different environments: coasts, grasslands, forests, deserts, cold regions, river valleys. Not instantly, not perfectly, but repeatedly. We became specialists in not being too specialized. A polar bear is amazing in the Arctic. Put it in a desert, and it has some complaints. Humans are physically ridiculous in both places, but give them enough time, enough social learning, and enough dangerous experimentation, and they start making clothing, shelters, fishing tools, traps, storage methods, ornaments, boats, and rules. We change behavior faster than bodies can evolve. That is enormous. If the climate changes and your survival depends only on your body, you wait for evolution, which is slow, very slow. Evolution does not care that you are cold this Tuesday. But culture can move faster. Someone tries a new method, someone copies it, someone improves it, someone teaches it to a child. A neighbor group sees it and steals the idea, because prehistoric copyright law was not strongly enforced. And suddenly, a behavior spreads. This may be one reason Homo sapiens became so dangerous. We were not the strongest human. We were the human that could keep updating. But every solution created new problems. Bigger networks mean more exchange, but also more conflict and more disease. Closer contact between groups can spread tools and ideas, but also pathogens. We cannot know exactly how diseases moved between ancient human populations, but it is plausible that contact brought biological risks, especially for small groups with limited immunity. Migration opens new land, but it also brings strangers into someone else's world. Better weapons help with hunting, but also make humans more dangerous to humans. This is the dark turn. The traits that helped Homo sapiens survive may also have made us the most disruptive human on Earth. We did not just adapt to landscapes, we changed them. We hunted, burned, moved, built, taught, copied, planned, remembered, returned. A predator hunts because it is hungry. Humans hunt, remember where the herd panicked, teach the children, improve the spear point, come back with relatives, and discuss the plan around a fire. That is not just survival. That is strategy, and strategy changes ecosystems. Other human groups were also intelligent and capable, but in the long run, Homo sapiens may have had a combination that was unusually hard to beat. Flexible culture, larger networks, symbolic communication, long-distance movement, and the ability to cooperate with people beyond the immediate family. Not always peacefully, not always kindly, but effectively. And effectiveness in prehistory was not cute. It was the difference between descendants and silence. So maybe the reason we are the only humans left is not that we were magically superior. Maybe it is because we were just slightly more connected. Slightly more flexible, slightly more numerous in the right places, slightly better at turning memory into survival, and slightly more able to absorb other groups into our expanding story. Over thousands of years, slight advantages are not slight anymore. They become the whole planet. And that is the lonely part. We are used to thinking of humans as alone because we are special. But maybe we are alone because the world was harsh, populations were fragile, and our kind became very good at surviving in ways that made it harder for others to remain separate. The last Neanderthals did not know they were the last Neanderthals. That thought should stay with you. They did not wake up one morning and say, well, this is the final chapter of our species. They woke up cold, hungry, worried about children, watching the sky, fixing tools, listening for animals, doing what people do, trying to make it to tomorrow. And then one day, somewhere, the last group was gone. No dramatic ending, no final speech, just no one left to remember. Except, in a strange way, us. A little of them remains in many modern humans. Not enough to bring back their worlds, but enough to prove the story was never simple. We are not the only humans because the others were stupid. We are the only humans because survival is not fair. It rewards timing, numbers, networks, adaptation, luck, and the ability to keep useful knowledge alive. Homo sapiens survived with tools, fire, language, memory, social bonds, migration, teaching, and a terrifying talent for turning almost anything into a plan. We were weak alone, but together, we became a problem the Ice Age could not easily solve. And maybe that is the final twist. The most dangerous human trait was never our teeth, our claws, or our strength. We did not have those. The dangerous trait was that one human could learn something painful, another human could remember it, a child could be taught it, and a group could carry that lesson into a place they had never been before. That is how a fragile animal becomes a planetary species. Not by being stronger than the dark, but by sitting around a fire and explaining to the next generation exactly where the dark has teeth. So the next time your phone battery drops to 1% and you feel civilization leaving your body, remember this. Your ancestors survived a world full of other humans, giant animals, freezing nights, bad tools, infected cuts, and suspicious mushrooms. And somehow, after all that, the only human left is the one now complaining that the charger is in the other room.